This video is brought to you by Manscaped. Stick around to hear more about the discount they are providing to the entire upper echelon community. Okay, not too long ago, I covered the potential Twitter buyout proposed by Elon Musk. I won't rehash everything I said in that previous video, most of it isn't relevant anymore anyway, but the basic overview is that Elon Musk systematically acquired about 9% of the company in early 2022. This acquisition was a calculated move to influence company dynamics, and after some back and forth on whether or not Elon Musk would actually join Twitter's board of directors, some say this was driven by Twitter attempting to mitigate further action, others say it was a mind game by Elon Musk to buy himself more time. I honestly don't know. After all that, and more, it was made clear that Elon Musk was actually going to make a push at acquiring the company. This process, generally speaking, is not an easy thing to do. Buyouts for multi-billion-dollar companies are quite complicated, but after issuing what amounts to a financially hostile takeover notice, also called a bear hug in the stock world, Twitter responded by using a poison pill strategy. For those that don't know, the poison pill defense is a tactic to make acquisition of a company far more expensive than it was previously by issuing new shares at a certain threshold of ownership, I believe is how it works. In this case, if Elon Musk surpassed, I think, 15% control of the company, there would be a massive offering of new shares to current investors, which would have widespread impact on the company's market cap and share price. The poison pill is a very risky, very aggressive strategy that Twitter landed on almost immediately. However, in a series of breakneck pace questionable developments in all this, that strategy did not last long, because Elon Musk decided to hint at a tender offer, an offer aimed at the holders of a public company's stock, with the intention to elicit sales during a specific period of time at a significant market premium. I'm not completely positive on why the distinction is made. His original $54.20 offering also seemed to be fundamentally a tender offer, but with further hints by Musk to that end, it seemed more likely that he would push this bid to the extreme, thus triggering the poison pill, and ultimately Twitter agreed to the buyout at a price of $54.20. 420 is the meme, with certain criteria attached as well. Okay, before going any further, it's time for a bit of a serious topic and a promotional segment as well. On average, one man every hour of every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer. It's actually the most common type of cancer among men ages 15 to 35, which is also the exact same demographic as this channel's audience. The month of April is actually National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and with that in mind, Manscaped has teamed up with the Testicular Cancer Society for an awareness campaign and a special product discount in the process. For a limited time, you can get a special edition TCS Lawn Mower 4.0. It's cordless, waterproof, has an LED light attached, and is perfect for below-the-belt grooming of all kinds. There are only 10,000 being made ever of these, the limited edition purple models, so if you click the link down below in the description right now, you can not only get an excellent limited time product, you can also support a great cause in the process. Use promo code UPPER and the link down below for 20% off your entire order. And on top of that, Manscaped is donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society in support of men's health. Big thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring the channel. That's basically our starting point for today. Elon Musk began to acquire stock, used that stock to gain leverage, had a back and forth with the company, which in my opinion very much seemed to contain veiled financial threats. Twitter responded with an aggressive and risky strategy. Musk didn't back down, and Twitter folded. That's essentially how it looks, at least to me from the outside. So what else has happened? I'm not even really sure where to begin here because the whole thing is a radioactive and highly volatile situation, but I guess I'll start with what some are calling conspiracy and others are calling justice. In the mere days that have transpired since the public announcement of Twitter's impending buyout, conservative accounts have seen massive follower growth. Now, you may say, oh, that's just a coincidence, or oh, probably not that much, but let me just showcase this. I'll start with Donald Trump Jr. Now, keep in mind, nothing I say right now has anything to do with political inclination or endorsement. I am simply looking at numbers and showcasing the reality of what is going on. Donald Trump Jr., since the buyout hit mainstream news, has gained over 200,000 followers. In less than 1 day, he stands at net positive 119,000. That's 1 day. Well, half a day, actually, which is about 30 times higher than his average before all this. For the sake of time, I'm going to speed through these next ones, and I know that it may feel repetitive in a minute here, but I'm trying to demonstrate just how widespread the trend really is. Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida, conservative, over 200,000 followers gained in the past 2 days alone, 20 to 30 times his average. Tucker Carlson, conservative television host, Fox News, 140,000 followers in the past 48 hours, 200 to 300 times higher than his recent averages. Steven Crowder, conservative comedian and host. Bit of a difference with a gap between the 25th and the 27th, but in less than 1 day, up 50,000 followers before noon, 20 to 30 times his average. Tim Pool, conservative podcaster and YouTuber, and also I would love to go on Timcast if you ever see this dude, up 60,000 followers in 2 days, 10 to 20 times his average. Lauren Boebert, 100,000 in 2 days. Matt Gaetz, 60,000 in 2 days. Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, these are all conservative politicians, by the way, 100,000 in 2 days, when she only even had 500,000 before that. Ben Shapiro, owner of the Daily Wire, 100,000 in 2 days with a spike before that as well of 45,000. Dana Loesch, 20,000 in 2 days, when her previous average was maybe a couple hundred, if that. Sean Hannity, almost 100,000. Rep. Jim Jordan, over 100,000. Leo Terrell, over 80,000. And the list goes on and on and on. However, this trend is not isolated to just one side of the political aisle. It may be easy to say a rising tide lifts all boats here and come to the conclusion that a massive increase in news coverage of Twitter has generated a torrent of fresh accounts, and that's probably true to a degree. But if you look at left-leaning politicians, television hosts, and public figures, you see the inverse. AOC, notorious left-leaning politician, down almost 40,000 followers in the past 2 days. VP Kamala Harris, down over 16,000, after being net positive every single day before that in the thousands. Elizabeth Warren, over 20,000 down. Bernie Sanders, negative 22,000. Hillary Clinton, negative 20,000. And this extends as a mirror image all the way to CNN hosts like Brian Stelter and Don Lemon, as well as countless more over the past 2 days. Now, one side is crying that this must be evidence of algorithmic bias and suppression being lifted, while the other side is claiming that this is a Russian bot network attempting to influence our country again. Now, in my mind, they are equally as absurd, owing to the fact that during key periods of time surrounding major news like January 6th or the 2020 election or the State of the Union even, there are shifts very similar to this. However, in the short-term memory of the American public, which is very short, I might add, this is one of the larger, more widespread follower movements that we have seen since, I guess, November of 2020. So maybe it seems like more than it is, and part of me wants to think that maybe Twitter is doing something shady with their algorithm. Like, I would believe that, but I don't know if I'm at that point just yet. Anyway, that's the movement we see in terms of follower count, which by itself would be nothing really to talk about, but in conjunction with everything else, Twitter is having some trouble. The next thing we need to be aware of is that, according to Bloomberg sources, Twitter has had to lock down product changes to the source code because they are worried that disgruntled employees are going to make significant and harmful changes to their platform. That's not a healthy state of affairs for a multi-billion-dollar company that contains over 7,000 employees, when that company is on track to be owned by someone that those employees appear to despise. I would guess, based on what I have seen and been told, that the spread is actually fairly equal between those who are angry, happy, or neutral, but those who are angry are almost always far louder and more destructive. This kind of dismay at the prospect of Elon Musk owning the platform is not isolated. The head of the actual lead of Twitter's trust and safety team, the people who do content moderation and banning in particular, broke down in tears, allegedly, during her meeting with staff discussing the subject. This is a woman who has been wielding unimaginable power over public discourse, crying because Elon Musk has expressed a free speech absolutist position. Just think about that. Here is how some figures in the media are reacting right now.
If you own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election. Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear, open-minded helper.
Elon Musk owning Twitter could mean that he bans political candidates and turns down the reach of their posts. That is a legitimate fear. It really is. And yet, that is a fear that has been widely expressed for years by the conservative side of the aisle, because they feel that their content is being suppressed, throttled, and removed. And I didn't hear anything like this from the media before that point, until now, which means as soon as a shift has taken place, and they say, oh, well, what if what has been happening, or allegedly happening, and what a certain group of people feel has been happening for a very long time, well, what if that happens to us? But they were very quiet before this point in time. It is staggering to watch the real-time shift in public discourse. Just months ago, you would be bombarded with criticism that it's a private company and they can do whatever they want when you spoke out against unjust banning, or at least what you subjectively believe is unjust banning. I'm not saying that every single ban on Twitter was some kind of conspiracy, but if you spoke out against it thinking that there was some kind of shady thing going on, you would be bombarded with it's a private company argument. That was very common. But more recently, the shift has taken place, and by shift I mean polar opposite transformation overnight where everyone reversed their entire opinion, where it is now bad that Twitter will be privately owned. And even though Elon Musk expresses hardline free speech positions, what if he bans people that we agree with and it's unfair? Here's one for you. We even see accounts like Public Citizen claiming that since Elon Musk personally blocked them on the platform, it somehow contradicts the idea of freedom of speech. That's brain dead, right? It is. It's like if I block someone from commenting here on YouTube under a video and they cry about freedom of speech. Because in truth, they can still go comment on any other video from any other creator, just not these ones. It all comes down to a fundamental understanding of what free speech actually is and how you view social media platforms. If you believe that Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, whatever it is, are just private companies with a curated space that they unilaterally control, and you believe it should be that way, something that a large number of Twitter users have made a sharp about face on recently, then you accept the idea of platforms banning users for subjective and inconsistent reasons. You may like it today, but you might not like it tomorrow. Now, that is at a platform level. If a user decided to block someone, it's like a person standing on the street, putting on headphones while you're talking to them just because they don't want to hear you. Is your free speech violated in that scenario? No, and only pure idiots would ever think so. Because you can still say whatever you want, you just aren't saying it to them while they listen to you. However, if you begin to view social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., as a public square of sorts, or a digital extension of speaking out in the world, with social spaces and conversations that are now akin to spoken words in the enormous evolving digital landscape, if you start to think of the platform that way, you begin to enter the realm of freedom of speech. If Twitter bans you from what is considered a digital public square, it's like the town removing you from a public space for saying something that they subjectively disagree with, the person in power. And that is the self-professed position of Elon Musk, that he doesn't want that to be happening. His actual, more precise position is that if people want less free speech, they will pass laws to that effect through our democracy, which would indicate that he will pursue a legal reference when deciding what content to allow. This means that if you post content that directly violates the law, you will be banned. And I don't think anyone out there is arguing against that, right? That's pretty reasonable. But he will not support, or so he claims at this point in time, the banning of opinions. News media frenzy as a result of all this is climbing fast. One of the more rapidly emergent narratives centers on Musk amplifying criticism of Twitter employees and, as the Washington Post writes, boosting or prompting online attacks. Washington Post writer Will Oremus on Twitter said, quote, Elon Musk has now publicly agreed with and amplified criticisms from the right of two individual Twitter employees today, one accusing its top policy exec of censorship and the other accusing a company lawyer of facilitating fraud. Imagine getting up and going to work in the morning for a company whose new owner is systematically attacking your colleagues for his 84 million followers in public on the site you work for, and knowing you might be next. This is the worst case scenario Twitter employees feared, end quote. But here's the thing. Let's look at what he actually said. In response to someone who is claiming that the lead trust and safety executive was upset, Elon Musk simply replied, suspending the Twitter account of a major news organization for publishing a truthful story was obviously incredibly inappropriate, end quote. That's number one. Number two, all he said was, sounds pretty bad. That's the whole quote. When someone claimed that a Twitter lawyer had facilitated fraud. That really is it. Somehow, the most mild, non-venomous critical tweets have become the worst case scenario for Twitter employees. And even better, Jack Dorsey, a previous CEO of Twitter, acknowledged publicly that it was wrong of them as a company to block a story from the New York Post during election season. Elon Musk saying that a content moderation decision that the CEO at the time admits was wrong, was inappropriate, is the worst case scenario for Twitter employees. These people are so weak when it comes to differing opinions. They cannot even withstand the simple statement that something your own CEO admits was wrong was inappropriate, and then saying sounds pretty bad when an allegation is made. That's all he said. Let that sink in. Now, as if anyone needs this, but to demonstrate that yes, the narrative is claiming this was an attack. Here is the Palmer report, a notoriously bad outlet in my opinion, but whatever, on Twitter, saying, quote, Elon Musk has publicly attacked two high-ranking Twitter employees today, putting him in violation of the disparagement clause in his buyout agreement. It's unclear if he's just unraveling in general or if he's purposely trying to get the buyout deal voided, end quote. This buyout has crossed into the realm of absurdity. As all of this unfolds, Senator Josh Hawley, U.S. Senator from Missouri, openly called on Elon Musk to remedy a situation where he says Twitter has ignored numerous requests for transparency and action. This letter specifically mentions bans, shadow bans, and other suspension decisions, which feeds back into the swirling public speculation right now on why such a massive and dual-sided follower shift is occurring. Not done? Nope, not done, because at the very same time, coincidentally, in a knee-jerk reaction, who knows, at the very same time as all this, Jen Psaki, White House press secretary for the Biden administration, is on stage saying the following.
What I can tell you as a general matter, no matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause. He has been a strong supporter of fundamental reforms to achieve that goal, including reforms to Section 230, enacting antitrust reforms, requiring more transparency, and more. And he's encouraged that there's bipartisan interest in Congress. In terms of what hypothetical policies might happen, I'm just not going to speak to that.
A swirl of media coverage, a massive corporation being taken private that holds sway over a significant section of public discourse online right now, a man who proclaims that free speech is the bedrock of our society, and an angry, vicious mob attacking him for that position. Did I mention that already? Yeah. As the Washington Post runs stories about a couple Twitter employees who are upset because their inappropriate conduct was called inappropriate, using 2 or 3 examples of insults and threats that were thrown their way, Elon Musk is receiving thousands. Put together by Data Racer, this is just a small spattering of what is being hurled at Elon Musk by a vitriolic and frenzied mob. Why might that be? Simple. According to Pew Research, there is an extreme stratification in terms of Twitter activity, with the 10% of users who tweet the most being majority women and focusing mainly on politics. Within that group, Democratic representation is higher than it is in the general public, meaning that, according to the numbers, strictly speaking, as per Pew Research, Twitter discourse is driven predominantly by a relatively small number of majority Democrat users focusing on politics. I think we can start to understand, given how toxicity and polarization usually increases over time these days online, why the meltdown is happening. All of the stops are coming out. Open Markets Institute, again, Open Markets, funny name, Institute, which claims to be a group protecting individual liberties and democracy, has pushed for the FCC to block the Twitter acquisition entirely. FCC Commissioner Carr, in response, said, quote, and I love this one, quote, "The FCC has no authority to block Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, and to suggest otherwise is absurd. I would welcome the full FCC making it clear that we will not entertain these types of frivolous arguments," end quote. A group aiming to protect democracy is trying to stop someone who says he will have a rigid approach to freedom of speech while in control from getting control. At a certain point, I start to question what the actual goal of these people really is. As if all this couldn't get more complicated, Elon Musk put up his own stake in Tesla as collateral for a loan. The Twitter deal is pegged to the price of Tesla stock, and if it falls too much, or too low rather, it could quite literally blow up the entire deal. In the aftermath of that realization, the share price of Tesla, as appraised by Wall Street, dropped like a rock, and while it seems stable right now as I make this video, there is no telling how the rest of the acquisition will go. Now, a bit of my own speculation here, banks and other lending companies are not going to enforce disfavorable terms or margin calls or whatever it is against Elon Musk, because he has a clear propensity for holding grudges, first of all, and they are not going to risk their ability to be involved with whatever business ventures he undertakes here forward. When you have $100,000 of debt to a bank, this is a better way of looking at it. If I have $100,000 of debt to a bank, they don't care. It's my problem to solve. When I have billions of dollars in debt, it's not just my problem, it's their problem too, right? Like everyone is affected by that much more. And when you're also the world's richest man, they aren't going to burn bridges like that, especially with growing companies in other industries. They will make it work, if you will, for you and maintain that relationship, right? That's my firm belief. However, I don't have a crystal ball, so take that for what you will. It's purely speculation. Elon Musk appears to be seeking to emulate sovereign laws for separate countries in his pursuit of proper content moderation, meaning it wouldn't actually be as complicated as some are currently suggesting for him to sculpt Twitter moderation around the globe. And yet, this cohesive and frankly sensible, in my opinion, right? It's what YouTube does right now. Different countries have different laws, so they have different moderation in those countries. So this sensible, in my opinion, business practice is seen as an existential threat by so many of the people who currently inhabit the platform. Why that might be, I'm not sure. Some sort of ideological mental breakdown, delusion, or possibly genuine concern at the mere concept of change. Elon Musk buying Twitter has become a bit of a roller coaster. Also, this argument that we don't need a billionaire in control of a platform like Twitter, I mean, Facebook called. Mark Zuckerberg wants to talk to you. It's not a foreign concept. We have not been living with anything different for this entire time. So why is it suddenly something that is so deserving of frenetic energy and freaking out? It's really baffling. As with my previous video, a lot remains to be seen, including whether or not the deal even goes through, but a week ago, predictions were that Twitter would never accept a bid with meme numbers like 420, and that Elon Musk had no chance of making the acquisition go forward. But now, it's going forward, and a lot of people saying the words never or impossible are having to completely redefine their position. All in all, Twitter appears to be, in no small way, having a bit of a meltdown over Elon Musk. Again, more in the future, but for today, that's it. If you want to support, check the links down below, primarily Patreon and Locals if you like the channel content and want to support, but also Odyssey, a YouTube platform alternative, as well as another creator to check out, merchandise, Manscaped, and social media. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.